Hello, everybody. Welcome to Inform TV. In this presentation, we want to talk about this concept of aluminum. Now, aluminum is in a lot of different products. We use aluminum and everything, and I've been doing some research on the side. I was about to head over to the gym, and I got thinking about putting a little bit of salt in my oatmeal because I wanted to give it some flavor and some taste. And I just purchased this oatmeal and I just purchased the salt. Actually, just purchased the salt, and the salt is from Signature Kitchens. Now, I'm sure this is in a lot of other people's products and things too, but we just don't even realize it. But when I just want salt, I just get salt. That's all I think of it. Sodium chloride is salt, okay, and that's good for our bodies. We know some iodine wouldn't hurt to be added to the salt, and that's fine. But nowadays, when I went to this kind of cheaper place, it's one of those dollar store places. This particular salt says, okay, the ingredients are salt. I don't know if you can see this or not, but then I don't know if I can, so you can really picture. You probably can't really see it because it might be blurry, but I just don't know. Hopefully, you see what I'm seeing. But it basically says salt, sodium silicoaluminate. Now, I've heard that aluminum is not good for you. In fact, I've heard these various health shows that says aluminum kind of collects in the brain. It can lead to dementia and Alzheimer's disease. I got to wondering how in the world could they put this aluminum in our foods? I know that in the past that people stopped cooking a lot of aluminum ware, aluminum pans, because of the aluminum leaching of the food. Well, why did they change that? What was the issue that they had there? I got thinking about that. And then I got thinking the fact that, when you're cooking, there are two different sides of aluminum foil. There's the shiny side and there's the dull side. And we're supposed to cook on the dull side, not the shiny side. Now, some of y'all may not have known that because the dull side has a protected covering so the aluminum doesn't leach into the food. So I was thinking about that. And then I got thinking about the deodorants we use. So many times people want to get deodorant, and the deodorant, the antiperspirants, pretty much all of them have aluminum zirconium inside of them, and so that aluminum has access to the pores, and that aluminum just leaches right into the skin. And our skin is one of the biggest organs in the body. So I got thinking about why in the world would we put aluminum in such products if we know that that's causing and leading to dementia. Now, it may be possible that some maybe have a predisposition of receiving aluminum that causes dementia. Maybe it runs in the family. So, because I knew that certain people, my family, great uncles, great aunts, and things, had some sort of dementia, and they had different cases and issues with Alzheimer's disease, I definitely don't want that disease. So, even at age 17, I began to work on maintenance, making sure that I'm as healthy as I can possibly be. That's why I never smoked, never drank, never took drugs, and I've been pretty healthy over the years and things. And so many times things like this catches my attention. So I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I am a logical thinker, and in fact, it looks like the Alzheimer's Association just sent me an article, some resources about some of the issues I was bringing up to them. I was just talking with the Alzheimer's Association and about this issue because I came across an article recently. So number one, I'm at this article of Alzheimer's Association. They showed me this first of all. I went to their helpline and they talk about Alzheimer's myths. And myth number 4 says drinking out of aluminum cans or cooking in aluminum pots and pans can lead to Alzheimer's disease. Now they call it a myth. Now, I know that a lot of those things have a lot of protective coatings on them anyway, so there's a law now that requires those manufacturers to have protective coatings on them. It says during the 1960s and 1970s, aluminum emerged as a possible suspect in Alzheimer's. This suspicion led to concern about exposure to aluminum through everyday sources such as pots, pans, beverage cans, antacids, antiperspirants. Since then, studies have failed to confirm any role for aluminum in causing Alzheimer's disease. Can you imagine the lawsuits that would be if it ever came out that all this stuff caused Alzheimer's disease? Experts today focus on other areas of research. Few believe that everyday sources of aluminum pose any threat. Okay, so that's what they say. I wonder how much money people paid to get that sort of information out to the public. Say, oh, it's no threat at all. Just like they used to do it with tobacco. They said tobacco is not a problem. It's good for you, good for your skin, good for your image, good for your personality, and all those kind of things. You had all this advertisement, cartoon caricatures with people using tobacco. Uh, I digress. I also think that that's what's going to happen with marijuana as well. I believe that they're going to be using people who are addicted to marijuana to push marijuana online and stuff. Say, oh, this is a wonderful drug for you. And then once it gets regulated, the big tobacco industries will then control all the marijuana industries and markets, and only they can support the regulations because everyone wants more tax dollars. And then they're going to find out, oh man, this stuff is not so good for you. We're getting impaired drivers and people are dying of all kinds of new diseases that we never were told existed, but then they really did exist. The research was out there, but it just didn't get popularity, didn't get the market share of people's knowledge base. Okay, so eventually, I think that's what's going to happen with marijuana too. The tobacco industries are going to try to control that, and then now you'll be able to sue the people. Right now, you can't sue anybody for the health effects of marijuana. But that's another topic. Okay, we're talking about the salt stuff here. Okay, silica aluminate, sodium silicoaluminate. So I did some research into that. Aluminate is a form of aluminum. Okay, so that interests me because I know that sodium is a positive charge of 1. I know aluminum happens to be a positive charge of 3. And silica, wasn't too sure about that. I didn't do enough research on that part. But I know that somehow silico is in it, which is like what's in salt, basically. So perhaps it's a preservative. Perhaps it's a way to make sure the salt doesn't clump together, but therefore is a preservative. And we are ingesting the salt with the preservative. It's not like aluminum's a gas or something floating around. We're ingesting the salt with the aluminum in it. It's not like the aluminum kind of goes out when you cook it either. It stays in the food. Obviously, it's a preservative. And so then I got to research something about aluminum, and I came across this article that came out in 2017, and the article is called "Aluminum should now be considered a primary etiological factor in Alzheimer's disease." Again, this guy writes, aluminum should now be considered a primary etiological factor in Alzheimer's disease. And so I looked at the article. It sounds convincing. It's out of Europe, out of England, and it's from the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease Reports, Volume 1, Number 1, pages 23 to 25. Okay, this was published there. It's published this year. Just recently got published. It got accepted. This is a peer-reviewed journal. You also can download the actual PDF of the article as well. Okay, the abstract says, in this paper, I've summarized the experimental, largely clinical evidence that implicates aluminum as a primary etiological factor in Alzheimer's disease. The unequivocal neurotoxicity of aluminum must mean that when brain burdens of aluminum exceed toxic thresholds, that it is inevitable that aluminum contributes toward disease. Aluminum acts as a catalyst for an early onset of Alzheimer's disease in individuals with or without concomitant predispositions, genetic or otherwise. Alzheimer's disease is not an inevitable consequence of aging in the absence of a brain burden of aluminum. Okay, he goes further here. New evidence now points aluminum as a contributory factor in all forms of Alzheimer's disease. I repeat, as a contributory factor in all forms of Alzheimer's disease. Can you imagine the lawsuits? Folks, just think about that for a moment. We have aluminum in so many products. We have it in our deodorant. Are they trying to kill us or something? Now, again, I'm not a doctor. I'm just repeating what this person is saying. This just came out. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people questioning now what's happening to our society. How come our country has one of the highest levels of some of these diseases of kidney failure and diseases like Alzheimer's. How come our country has to be the one? So anyways, aluminum is unquestionably neurotoxic, and it is accepted as a cause of encephalopathy. Okay, I apologize for my mispronunciations. There it goes again. Encephalopathies. And for example, individuals undergoing renal dialysis, and primarily individuals who have received aluminum-based prosthesis. Oh dear! So these people are getting these prosthesis and they have aluminum inside them. You see the scandal brewing. You see the lawsuits mounting, folks. There are a myriad ways why aluminum can exert toxicity. It is Al3 positive, aqueous ion. Is highly biologically reactive, but to do so thereby bring about change in a biochemical system. The aluminum content of any compartment, such as a tissue, must achieve a toxic threshold or burden. Okay, now notice that there's these numbers here. Those numbers are the research articles that he backs everything up by. Okay, we're going to look at one of those research articles in a second that we really want to target on. But everything he's saying is backed up by actual scientific research. This is a peer-reviewed journal and it was accepted. So this is hot off the press, folks. And although we've heard all this other information from other people, it was probably based on perhaps information that was paid for by some of the industries. Okay, so let's go back to here. Okay, so they said this Al aluminum 3 aqueous ion is highly biologically reactive, but to do so and thereby bring about change in the biochemical system, the aluminum content of any compartment, such as a tissue, must achieve a toxic threshold or burden. So it's got to get to a certain level for it to really become reactive and exert its toxicity. Okay. However, aluminum-induced encephalopathies are not Alzheimer's disease though they share some similar neuropathological hallmarks. They are acute conditions, whereas Alzheimer's disease might now be considered as an acute response to chronic intoxication by aluminum. Okay. So it's like you can get intoxicated with alcohol, you can get intoxicated with aluminum. Isn't that something? Okay. We do not know what causes Alzheimer's disease. Now, this is what he says. We do not know what causes Alzheimer's disease. He makes a qualifier. While the causes of Alzheimer's disease remain unknown, we do know that the neuropathology of Alzheimer's disease, if not the disease per se, and especially in relation to the deposit of amyloid that is called pi, I believe it is, or delta, it's some kind of form there, tau, and can be reproduced in transgenic animal models. Okay, so they don't know the cause of it, but they do know that they can reproduce it. So this is a replicatable, this is reproducible. This is actual science right here, folks. Can be reduced in transgenic animal models. We also know that the addition of aluminum to feed or water exacerbates in many symptoms of Alzheimer's disease in these animal models. Okay, so they give the animals more aluminum, they exhibit the signs of what's considered Alzheimer's disease. Okay. What are the pertinent risk factors for Alzheimer's disease? That's a question. In the majority of individuals, aging is perhaps the single most important risk factor for the development of Alzheimer's disease. And sorry about that. And similarly, aging is also the most critical criterion in the accumulation of aluminum in the body's brain tissue. Neurons have been described as the quintessential immortal cell line, and it is their longevity that predisposes them to accumulate aluminum over time. So as people get older, this aluminum is just building up and building up. There are various intraneuron pools, for example, citrate, ATP, glutamic acid, and the nucleic acids of the nucleus, where aluminum could remain benign and accumulate over time before at some point the biological reactive aluminum exceeds a critical threshold and begins to exert toxicity. So you mean to tell me, folks, that over time our bodies are, or we're just getting built up and built up with this aluminum. So all the time you've been caking on that deodorant, you're just building up the toxicity of aluminum in your body. You're just building it up. And eventually it's going to reach a threshold where new developments will now manifest. It's like if you eat a lot of strawberries, what happens? Your tongue gets inflamed. It's because it's creating inflammation. Your body's very acidic, and therefore it's creating this type of reaction because it's too much acid. Your body can't uh, maintain its homeostasis of the pH factor of 7.8. So that's alkalinity. So likewise with aluminum, it has its own factors. And unfortunately, as this guy is saying, Alzheimer's could be that factor, or he's actually saying it is the factor. Mutations, this is key right here. They're going to hear something that people may not want you to hear. Mutations in the metabolism and processing of the amyloid protein precursor and related biochemistry are significant risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. These genetic predispositions form the basis of a diagnosis of familial Alzheimer's disease, which invariably an earlier onset form of the disease. So familial means it's something you inherit, it's something that's related in your genes or something like that. So they're saying that this particular protein, this amyloid protein, is a precursor and a related biochemistry are significant risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. And these are the research numbers right here. You can see that at the bottom of the page. These genetic predispositions form the basis of a diagnosis of familial Alzheimer's disease, which is invariably an early onset form of the disease. We have recently completed the first ever, listen to this, we have recently completed the first ever study on the aluminum content of brain tissue from donors who died with a diagnosis of familial Alzheimer's disease. This is the location of that article. Okay. The data supported by complementary imaging used in fluorescent microscopy. Okay, this is the data right here on this number right here. Okay, it's one of the journals here. Revealed some of the highest concentrations of aluminum ever measured in the human brain tissue. These seminal findings suggest that this amyloid protein precursor and mutations associated with its metabolism and enzymatic processing predispose individuals to a more rapid accumulation and or longer retention of aluminum in the brain tissue. Wow, that is a blockbuster statement right there. For example, one or more of these mutations may result in the enhanced absorption of aluminum across gastrointestinal tract in individuals with familial Alzheimer's disease, as has already been shown in individuals with Down syndrome, okay, and individuals with late-onset sporadic Alzheimer's disease. We know that within the non-Alzheimer's disease population that there can be an order of magnitude difference in the gastrointestinal absorption of aluminum. Similar differences may also exist in the excretion of aluminum from the body, and these differences may genetically determine may even be related to the metabolism and processing of this amyloid protein precursor, just it like that, and its numerous metabolic products, including amyloid, whatever that symbol is there. Okay. Now, there are occasional cases of Alzheimer's disease there are occasional cases of Alzheimer's disease with an early onset, for example, individuals in their 50s, where there are no genetic predispositions. We have described several such cases in which the affected individuals have been subjected to environmental or occupational exposure to high levels of aluminum over extended periods of time. So they've actually seen this happen, okay, in their occupation. These are people without the genetic predispositions. So if they don't have the predispositions, still it was the aluminum that carried a factor. They still have high amounts of aluminum in their bodies. Post-mortem analysis of their brain tissues reveal very high levels of aluminum. In these cases of early onset or particularly aggressive Alzheimer's disease without any known genetic predispositions, it was concluded that it was inevitable that aluminum contributed to the disease etiology. Now, what I'm reading here is basically a summary, a scientific summary of the actual article. And the article gets into such great details of different things. And so I'll show what the article looks like when you download it. This is just a summary. This is just in a summary, and it's content rich, okay? What protects against Alzheimer's disease? This is a question mark. So these people actually are doing the research. These are the actual researchers. Perhaps the people who will receive this information down the chain may not have gotten this information yet. And maybe you've never heard this information yet, but you've heard rumors about aluminum. Well, these people say that aluminum really does contribute to the disease. Okay? Now, this is where my little research comes in too. Okay? While we do not know the cause of Alzheimer's disease, and we do not have any effective therapies to treat the disease, there are a number of environmental indices which are known to influence the incidence and progression of Alzheimer's disease. For example, the incidence of Alzheimer's disease is higher in females, and the onset and progression of Alzheimer's disease may be delayed by physical exercise. Okay, that's a good thing to know. Aluminum is an ethnological factor in Alzheimer's disease, links to two in that perspiration is a cause route of excretion of aluminum from the body. Okay, so when you sweat, it helps eliminate the aluminum from the body. Well, then why in the world would you put aluminum up those sweat glands? Makes you wonder that, because if it's actually coming out, why would you clog it up with more aluminum? It seems like you're clogging it back in. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of weird why they would put aluminum in there. Okay, the absence, that's just my just basic deduction of that. Why in the world, if your body's trying to eliminate the aluminum by sweating, why during sweating process would you put the aluminum back on your armpits and clog it back up so it goes in your bloodstream even more and caked on? You know, it's ridiculous sometimes. Okay. In the absence of a physical exercise, women produce only half the volume of perspiration as men do, so may be predisposed to retention of aluminum in their tissues. And by the way, most women probably use antiperspirants like Secret and other things too. Just look at the antiperspirants. It's targeting women. So could that be a factor too? That's just my little observational assessment. In the absence of physical exercise, women produce only half the volume of perspiration as men, and so many predisposed to retention of aluminum in the tissues. In both sexes, the physical exercise can increase the perspiration volume many times, and so improve the excretion of aluminum from the body. That's a good thing. So I encourage everybody to exercise. Like, you know, I was just about to go exercising today, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and work out, weights. I'm going to sweat a lot, build some muscle, and it'll be a great thing. I encourage you to do that too, folks. Have a regular exercise program, running, walking, do something that makes you sweat and your heart to beat rapidly. Build that heart muscle up. Okay, could exercise induce improvements in the excretion of aluminum from the body be significant in the benefits of exercise and Alzheimer's disease? Epidemiological data have been equivocal in establishing a relationship between aluminum content of drinking water. So you mean to tell me there's aluminum in drinking water? According to this article, it is. And the indices of Alzheimer's disease. However, research has shown significant protective effect of silicon in drinking water. What? Have we heard this word before? However, research has shown a significant protective effect of silicon in drinking water, irrespective of the aluminum content, with higher silicon reducing the indices of Alzheimer's disease. This is their page right there. This is where the content is right there. Okay. In addition, clinical trials involving only a small number of participants have shown that regular drinking of silicon-rich mineral water helps improve aluminum, helps to remove aluminum from the body of individuals with Alzheimer's disease. Okay, folks, if you have a loved one with Alzheimer's disease, you need to try this out. Get some it's called silicon-rich mineral water. In fact, I've seen in the health food stores, in Vitamin World, Vitamin Shop, different places, they sell silicon products. You can just ingest it. And I guess silicon is not just like sand. I guess there's something to it. It's like one of those minerals our body needs. Some of those trace minerals, you know, our bodies need, but we don't really hear about us. You don't really hear a lot of media about it. We hear about vitamin C, vitamin B, vitamin D, the importance of those things. But silicon might be the key, folks. So this is hot off the press. This is latest research. I want you all to be aware of it. If you have a loved one with Alzheimer's disease, try it. Drinking a silicon-rich mineral water for just 12 weeks produces clinically significant improvements in their cognitive function. The potential benefits of silicon in Alzheimer's disease can only be explained if aluminum has a role to play in the disease. And guess what's in our salt? Make full circle here. Salt, sodium silicoaluminate. So you have your proof. It's even in the product right here, aluminate, a preservative. So the silicone combines with the aluminum perfectly so that perhaps it can just eliminate from our bodies. So maybe this salt may be good enough, but we're still ingesting aluminum. So it makes you wonder, okay, what if the aluminum breaks down so let's say the sodium connects with the hydrochloride, for example, all right, and then the aluminate goes into the chloride, so it's just called a reduction, basically, what I'm trying to say. If you're doing breaking down the chemistry of it, how does this break down our bodies? So basically, the silicone is broken down, the aluminate, which is like an acid, the 8 parts of acid. That means anything with 8 has oxygen at the end of it. I know that about chemistry. Okay, and then you got the silicone. So therefore, you have a certain amount of the 8, I guess. You basically have a lot more oxygen molecules when you break it down. But anyways, isn't it interesting that silicone is in the salt? So that's true, because if it wasn't, why would they say that silicone has its benefits? It combines with it, and sure enough, it combines here in our salt. But then why would we put the aluminum in? Because if we ingest this stuff, we know that many times it's going to break down. So maybe some of the sodium will go into the chloride for hydrochloric acid. Who knows? But where does aluminum go? We're just ingesting the aluminum in this salt, therefore. Unless it just passes through, hopefully. Hopefully it does pass through. But we don't know. Because we know that the things are being broken up. Maybe the hydrogen is going to connect with it in our hydrochloric acid. Who knows? I don't know. But it makes you wonder sometimes how things break down our bodies. But we know we're ingesting aluminum. And we do know that this article says that silicon does connect with it. And so hopefully it will pass through our bodies. Perhaps most of it will pass through. Maybe some portion of it. Well, let's read further. For 20% of such individuals, the lowering of the body's burden of aluminum following drinking of silicon-rich mineral water for just 12 weeks produced clinically significant improvements in their cognitive function. The potential benefits of silicon in Alzheimer's disease can only be explained if aluminum has a role to play in the disease. Like we said, it's silicon's in the salt, so therefore it does have a role to play, because even the industry knows that. Okay? Now, so maybe the salt is okay. Maybe. But still, I don't like the fact that we're putting aluminum in our bodies and ingesting it, because what if we take a vitamin or something? What would that do with this salt? How will the vitamin react, or some kind of, I guess, some sort of nutrient or something, or foods we eat? How does it break down in light of this aluminum that we're just ingesting in our bodies? That's why I think it's not wise to put aluminum in salt. I think it's just dumb. I think it's posing a risk. It's almost like they're researching, they're throwing this out in the. Now I bought this salt in a very low income place. It was a dollar store. Okay. So is this what they're doing to people who are low income? I actually live in a nicer area, but I decided to go to the dollar store, just buy something for cheap, And then I said, I wouldn't want to serve this to anybody I care about. I would not want to put anything with aluminum into their bodies. Okay? So I think it's just ridiculous. We're almost done with the article. In summary, aging is the major risk factor of Alzheimer's disease. Though the advent of Alzheimer's disease within a normal human lifespan is suggested to be brought about through human exposure to aluminum. Okay? Essentially, without aluminum, it says here again, essentially without aluminum in brain tissue, there would be no Alzheimer's disease. I repeat, essentially without aluminum in the brain tissue, there would be no Alzheimer's disease. That's what he's saying. So those plaques that build up, he's saying that this is the case. This is the part of the plaque that builds up in the brain. There are a number of predispositions to the development of Alzheimer's disease involving both environmental and genetic factors, and each of these acts to increase the aluminum content of the brain tissue at specific periods of an individual's life. This interplay between environmental and genetic factors explains both early and late onset disease. In each case, the catalyst for the disease is always the brain aluminum content. Is always, I repeat, is always the brain aluminum content and how robustly an individual's brain responds or copes with the aluminum burden. And these are the references right here, folks. All these are the references. So if you wanted to slow this video down, you can basically see these medical journals, or you can just get the article online. And these are actual researchers. Some of these people are from Japan, looks like. I mean, why aren't we being given this information, folks? Look at all this information. All this stuff. Everything is backed up. Everything that he's been talking about is backed up by science. Look at this. This is actual research. Peer review. And this is the one that talks about that aluminum hypothesis here. This is from Davenport, S. Bentham, and these are the locations. And these are just not one scientist. These are other scientists too. Peer-reviewed journals that date back, some cases, to 1987. And this one about the aluminum exposure here, this is from Davenport, S. Bentham, P. Wright, J. Crome, P. Job, D. Poward, A. Exley, C. That one came out in 2013. Silicon-rich mineral water as a non-invasive test of aluminum hypothesis and Alzheimer's. These are actual peer-reviewed journals, hypothesis and Alzheimer's disease. These are the journals it was at. Okay, so yes, folks, this is real. Okay, they said this is a part about the silicon in drinking water. Okay, and all these articles are right here before you. I'm going to post this link up on this description of this video so you all can do further research and you can even download the article. Now, without further ado, I want to show you the actual journal here. Okay, this is a PDF file here. Aluminum should now be considered a primary etiological factor in Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so this is just the article. You know what? I think that they just put this whole article in here. Everything I read to you is pretty much the whole article, but it's a PDF version of it. And these are also, they can just take that documentation and do your own research on these peer-reviewed journals and research. But they just summarize it for the average layperson who doesn't know as much and doesn't have access to this content. But it was accepted. It was accepted peer-reviewed research on May the 15th, 2017. Thank you all, and I hope you all have a healthy day, and let's try to stay away from the aluminum stuff until we know more about it. Thank you. God bless you.